I have been diving into a new book that is available now. I've got the PDF, so I can't hold it up the way that I like to, but we'll post it up on the screen here in a second. The book is simply called Caitlin Clark. Well, Caitlin Clark from the logo. Joining us now, you hear him on SiriusXM. You've read him a lot of places. He is the author of that book. He's Robin Lundberg, and he's with us right here on GCR. Robin, it's Glenn here in Baltimore. It's great to chat with you, man. Thank you so much for taking the time for us. Oh, Robin, I apologize. Are you on mute?
Thank you for having me. I'm actually a University of Maryland guy.
Oh, hell yeah.
Yeah.
Hashtag he a Terp. That's what we like to say. Robin, it's great to chat with you. I got a lot I want to cover with you because I one of the things I appreciate about this book, I'm gonna tell you, I almost purposely, and I feel terrible about it, avoid all of the discourse surrounding Caitlin Clark because it just exhausts me. It's so exhausting. I appreciate that the book, you always come back to joy. And I appreciate that because I do remember, particularly as, like she came to play at Maryland when she was at Iowa, I remember there was a point at which everything that surrounded the arrival of Caitlin Clark was just joy. It was just, my God, what a phenom we're watching, and didn't turn into this absurd political, discourse that it's been. And I'm assuming that was kind of the point for you and why you wanted to do this.
It was 100% the point. Look, I've been covering it for quite a while, right? And it's really like a once-in-a-lifetime story. But when we're thinking about the concept and how to execute it, that was my thesis, and that was my mission statement. So I'm glad that cut through in that way for you because, it's almost like a repeat of 2024. This year, and I couldn't have necessarily predicted that to be the case, but I think it actually fits the timing of the release perfectly because it was the point that I was making. Everybody always tries to attach all these other narratives that are all this other meaning, and I just wanted to recenter it and be like, no, this is what happened, and this is why she became who she is.
What is the line for you, Robin? Because I appreciate I do think that, like, the attention that was initially paid to Caitlin Clark and the reason why we were so fascinated with her was because of what you talk about. She played like Steph Curry. She did things that we hadn't seen anyone do before. And then it was co-opted by so many bad actors. And I know, obviously here in Baltimore we love Angel Reese, and we'll talk about Angel Reese, and it feels like that might have started this. And you allude to, I've talked about a lot, the Magic Johnson-Larry Bird, which feels like it should have always just been like a fun rivalry, but for so many people became so ugly. What happened? Why did it go from just being about joy and basketball and fun sporting rivalry? Is it just a statement of who we are as a people that we couldn't just keep it to that?
I think there's just a lot of layers to it. You're right. The Reese moment was almost like the foreshadowing, and obviously Caitlin Clark is white and Angel Reese is black, and for whatever reason that became a cultural moment, and they happened to enter the WNBA at the same time, so that allowed it to generate more conversation. But it hasn't really specifically been just in comparison to Angel Reese. It was also Clark's popularity as a whole, and the fact that she received so much singular attention in a league that had been around for a long time and had a lot of people who put in a lot of work and maybe felt unrecognized or underappreciated. So I think it's a combination of all those things. And then, yes, a bit of a microcosm of the polarization of society and the culture wars that have existed in society in recent years. And all of that has been co-opted. And the crazy irony of it is that Caitlin Clark says and does nothing controversial.
Right. It's just
she has said nothing controversial, yet somehow people have spun her into a controversial figure.
Well, they want her to be. Like, they want whatever they represent, they want her to represent that too. And it's maddening. And again, why I normally avoid the discourse. I think it's interesting too, because you point out even about the initial, what started the you can't see me, the John Cena thing. It's that even wasn't real. Like, it was, Caitlin Clark's never had an issue with it. She is an intense competitor. Haley Van Lith didn't have a problem with it. Like, as you allude to, this whole thing started with a premise that was so absurdly flawed to begin with that it's almost comical that we kind of created more out of it.
Yeah, and look, Angel went a little OD in that moment. She was following her around on the court, right? Like, but it doesn't have to. Then it doesn't have to be talked about for
international
weeks and weeks and weeks.
Like when you're playing the most important game of your life, you might be a little more intense. Maybe. I know it's crazy to think, but believe it or not, we've seen a million athletes who have been intense in big moments. It's just, I guess, we had never seen it from high-profile women's athletes the same way in that moment.
Yeah, and that's the other aspect of it, I think, is the women's dynamic. Yeah. So the WNBA is different than a lot of other leagues when you focus on the fact that obviously it's women. There's a sexuality nature to it that comes up, and then there's obviously the race thing that comes up. And for whatever reason, there are some, including in the media, who feel like if you're talking good about Caitlin Clark and giving her praise as a basketball player, you're making some sort of political statement or racially based statement when that's just nonsense, just hogwash, right? Like, so, we've never done that in other sports. I'd never really seen it in other sports in covering the NBA as long as I have either. Yeah. And it's also funny because there's been a lot of great white players in the WNBA in the past. It's not as if Caitlin Clark was, a unicorn in that sense. Her popularity is unique and such a phenomenon. And ultimately, I think that's the root of it. Everything else springs from it. And you get into the culture dynamics that exist within the league and the coverage that came from there. But ultimately, it's just mostly, I think, about that, a reaction to just somebody being so uniquely, generationally, once in a lifetime popular and lifting the league and being the focus of everything that it caused resentment.
Robin Lundberg is with us. Again, the book is Caitlin Clark from the Logo. We're going to link it up on our Twitter account at Glenn Clark Radio so you can go find it. Robin, I in reading the book, I appreciate how hopeful you kind of are, right? Like, I appreciate this desire. I still think this is about basketball, that we just want to enjoy a basketball player. I'll ask, is it too hopeful, right? Like, is it too – I'll make this comparison. For what it's worth, there is another Caitlin Clark book, and I will not have that author on this show because I think her premise is absurd, which is that the WNBA essentially should have burned everything down and just capitulated to everything Caitlin Clark related. I am incredibly frustrated by the number of people that will say, I refuse to watch anything that isn't Caitlin Clark. Well, it's so antithetical to what we want. The hope was that Caitlin Clark is going to rise all ships. Is it too hopeful to believe that this is still basketball and not just this awful cultural moment that has been too co-opted that we can't go back to that?
Few things, and it's a good question. I would say one is, it was both of those things. It was like, and I think that's where some of the resentment came from, is others would be like, I'm only watching Caitlin Clark and everybody else is trash.
Right.
And people would hear that, and of course they're going to feel a certain way. And then there was, I think, a lack of, or a hesitation as a result to lean in, where, like, I thought Caitlin Clark's last name was Angel Reese at one point, or, the commissioner would then have to list off all these other players when the question was simply about Caitlin Clark. And two dynamics have spread since then. And one is what you're talking about in all the discourse that currently surrounds the WNBA as we speak, right? And one of the problems there is, I think people have a really tough time, and I'll put a lot of blame on the media too, differentiating and realizing that social media and the like is not real life.
Mm-hmm.
Like the comment section is dictating the coverage way more than it should, because the real narrative around the WNBA, if I'm the commissioner and if I'm speaking for it, is, oh, you know what? The Golden State Valkyries are valuated $1 billion.
Yeah.
The Connecticut Sun, which were sold for 10 million, were just sold for 300 million. Ratings are records. Attendance is records. The CBA is the biggest pay raise in the history of sports. So what are you talking about? And a healthy league is not just about one player as it goes along. You don't want it to just be about Caitlin Clark in perpetuity. But the reason the hope still exists for me, and maybe, the Barack Obama moment can serve as a good turning point, because I think Nancy Armour wrote that unhinged column in USA Today, and the next day, Barack Obama was basically gave Caitlin Clark a pep talk, like
Right.
let go of all this nonsense. But she had that game against Seattle, the 45-point and 10 assist game. And I feel like the mood around the Indiana Fever like shifted in a positive direction since then. And it disarmed so many people because it did, I think, get back to the premise that I cover. And that's where I am hopeful for her in the future going forward as we get further and further away, that it can get back there. Maybe I am naive. Maybe I am a little bit too optimistic. But that would be my latest point of evidence is ever since she put up that game, which is the first 40-10 game in history, I feel like there's been more for her specifically a focus on what she does on the court.
It also sounds like what you're alluding to is the idea that, like, while I hear all of the mouth breathers who are, I refuse to watch, what you're saying is, but the evidence is that's not actually true. The evidence is that Caitlin Clark has risen all ships, that it has been a net benefit for the entire league, even if there are the loudest of the loud idiots that are just, you don't understand. It's just one group. Nobody cares about anything else.
Yeah, she's popular. She's not polarizing. You go into an arena, you don't hear people aren't saying like she's only popular because she's white in the arena. Like they're cheering and clapping when she makes the 3-point shot, or they're not having this discourse back and forth. Like it's just like any other sporting event, like that you go to and celebrate. It's so much of it is framed through what people are typing or what people are saying on Fox or whatever the case may be. And it almost like is a massive psyop because we wind up thinking that that's actually the story when, again, like I said, no. I mean, the Lynx in the Fever game, 2.5 million viewers on Sunday. Yeah. Were they hate watching that game or were they watching a great basketball game? I think it was the latter.
It's really well said, Rob. It's really well said about that. And it does. I think you are giving me more hope that, like, it can just be, because I think that's what my big takeaway is. Is there a point at which, and even given everything that she has gone into, like, even Sophie has talked about this in recent days, like, it would be nice for us to just cover the WNBA. You do, of course. You do a tremendous job of that. But so much of it only exists within this cultural spectrum. Is there a point where, when WNBA season comes around, we're just talking about the teams, where I can talk. I'll pull back. I moved out to Phoenix for a couple of years in the 2000s, and because in Baltimore we didn't have a team, I became a Phoenix Mercury fan. I'd love to talk about, does it make sense for them to trade for Kelsey Plum? I'd love to have a conversation about that, but I can't get anything from that. Or can we get to the point where it does just shift back to, hey, let's just watch basketball and this really compelling league and have conversations about transactions and standings and not about all of this culture war, BS.
Well, I think the burden falls on those who have the platform to do so, to just do so. That's one of the things, because the other thing is there's nothing you could do about, like I said, the cable news pundits or whatever. They're only talking about the WNBA in order to demean it or further their agenda or their discourse or whatever, right? Like they're just gonna, because it's smack dab chum for sharks. Then on the other side, you have this part of its growing pains because you have the old guard, if you will, that covered the league when nobody else was covering the league, or a lot fewer people were covering the league, and were able to get by doing the whatever they were doing as far as the activist aspect of things. And they always say sunlight is the best disinfectant. And I think some of this is that, like, it's rough, but we will get to the other side.
I long for that day. I long for that to come. I think the other part of this too, Robin, is that, like, obviously it would be really good for the WNBA if Caitlin Clark were to be, like, say, in the finals this year. Mm-hmm. That would be an incredible moment. I think it's worth recognizing how good the Fever are. Are they moving towards a point where that is, like, plausible? Obviously the Lynx, the Aces look like the two best teams in the league, but are they moving towards a point where that's a plausible scenario that, again, presumably would just be about basketball and the series and would be so good for the WNBA?
Yeah, I think the Fever are the second best team in the league.
Okay.
Right now. I think it's more than plausible. I mean, they have the best offense of all time, statistically, when it comes to points per game scored and offensive rating. So the Aces are obviously in that conversation and deserve the respect as the defending
They've
champs.
done it so much.
They played it.
Right. Yeah.
They play tonight, by the way, the Fever and the Aces. So that'll be a good litmus test game. And there are a bunch of other teams in that mix on that same tier. The Dream, the Valkyries have exceeded expectations, but they don't really have the scoring, I don't think, in a playoff series. But nonetheless, plenty of teams the Liberty deserve mention. The Lynx have looked like the best team because they did it all without Fee Collier, and they just got her back, obviously. But the Fever, look, they've got they've got 2 first team all W players in Caitlin Clark and Kelsey Mitchell and Aaliyah Boston. They may have some flaws on their roster and a little bit of a lack of depth, but I think that it's more than realistic for them to be in that mix. And again, they're, just by the stats, not me saying it, they're the best offense of all time right now. So, and yes, that would be huge for the league, because I think you could start to see numbers in the, 5 million north range if they were to get into the WNBA finals.
By the way, I feel like we shouldn't be allowed to talk about the Lynx without talking about Olivia Miles, who's just been friggin' awesome, man. Like, what a story that has been this season in Minnesota. Robin, the other thing, the tail end of it, like if I'm trying on the hopeful part, is that the next group of stars that we saw come through college basketball, it does feel like, while nothing compares to Caitlin Clark, like just that will be a phenomenon that there will never be a comp to. It does feel like the way that we got Juju Watkins and Paige, all of it feels like there has been a tail effect at the college level related to, hey, we are really excited about watching these special players, and the numbers back that up. Even if it's not quite at the Caitlin level, it does feel like there has been a real impact at the college level.
Yeah, I think, that rising tide thing has trickled down there, and there's a few other dynamics involved. A lot more guards now.
Yeah.
The WNBA has been a very post-big heavy
That's a
league,
great point.
and now there's a lot more exciting guards like Olivia Miles, who you just mentioned. And on top of that, it does seem like there's a different attitude from some of the players that are coming up versus the players who had been around. And the players who had been around didn't get the shine, didn't get the pay until recently, versus these girls are coming up in the NIL era, where they're transferring all over the place. They're getting a bag here and there, so they come in with a different mindset and a different mentality and post this already happening, not the event happening while they're there. So yes, I think that's true. I think as that's the way things evolve too. They, if you and I have this conversation 5 years from now or whatever, maybe we go, yo, you remember 2024 and 2026? Right. That was nuts.
Yeah.
and we're talking about a whole different crop of players.
Robin, I really appreciate how you wrote this book. I really appreciate, as someone who, I got to tell you, when it was presented to me, I rolled my eyes. I said, I don't want to do this. I appreciate the fact that I actually read the book, read what you were presenting, and I really appreciate how much you use the word joy, because God, has that been missing in all of our discourse, is just how much joy there is in watching this player and in watching this level of competition. Again, go pick up the book. It's Caitlin Clark from the logo. He a Terp, Robin Lundberg. Thank you for spending the time with us today. We really appreciate it, man. Would love to do it again soon.
No, thank you for that. That actually means a lot. That was your takeaway when you gave it a shot.
I appreciate you, man. Thanks for doing this.